Well, good morning. It's a privilege to be here. I'm going to stand out here as well so we can see the slides. I'm Doug Britton. I manage the Agricultural Technology Research Program at Georgia Tech, and our vision there is to drive transformational innovation through advanced technologies for agribusiness, poultry, and food processing. So it's a little bit different, but in the process of doing that, we were able to host the AGL class this past session, and Brian, I think, was part of that, and he said, boy, now I'm going to warn you, when I gave this talk at that session, we spent an hour and a half talking about this. So we're going to do this really quickly, and I'm going to tell you that we're going to fly through it, but don't worry. This is not original to me. It's really based on this book called Tribal Leadership. If you want more resources, that's a great resource to get, and it'll really kind of help explain a lot more of the detail. But it's a privilege to be here, and thank you for letting me come and share this with you. So, tribal leadership, leading people and understanding culture. So what is a tribe? Well, this is often what people think of when they think of a tribe, right? For our discussion this morning, we're going to consider a tribe to be a group of people organized loosely. It can be in a whole bunch of different settings. So some of you might think of it in a corporate setting, some of you might think of it in a social setting, others might think of it in other different settings. But a tribe is up to 150 people. 100 people is probably, 150 is probably getting pretty big for a tribe. But think of it all the way down to 20 or even less in that particular case. A good test for a tribe is, people are part of a tribe if they stop and say hello to one another on the street when they're out of town, right? So then oh, look, so they're so-and-so. We didn't expect to see them. And so that's kind of that litmus test. Are these people really part of a tribe? It's just a quick gauge of what we mean when we talk about a tribe. So what makes a tribe effective? I think Peter Drucker is the one that coined the phrase that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And those of you who've read any Drucker, he's one of the gurus in terms of thinking about corporate leadership and structure. So what makes a difference? Culture. Culture plays a huge role in what makes organizations effective. Now, for the sake of our discussions, culture does not mean the food we eat, the ethnicity of our team, the music we listen to, or those ethnic dances that I can't do, or my grandparents' Norwegian heritage, or any of that type of stuff. For the sake of our conversation, we're going to manage culture. We think of culture as the behaviors and the beliefs and symbols that a group accepts, generally without thinking about it, all right, that they pass on to the next generation through communication and imitation. And those are two real important phrases, communication and imitation, all right? Tribal leadership is really just a simplified framework of thinking about how people operate. All right, and you can think about how individuals operate at these different levels, or you can think about how groups operate at these different levels. And there's simply 5 stages, and it's somewhat arbitrary. They picked them, the authors of the book picked them simply because it made sense in terms of how you categorize it, and it gives you a framework for thinking about the overall perspective of leadership. It focuses primarily on the language that people use. You can tell where people are functioning or how they're operating, what level they're operating at by the words they use. You can also then look at different leverage points to upgrade them into the different stages. Now, I'm going to warn you real quick before we get into the stages. People are not defined by the stage. What I mean by that is people operate at a stage. And every one of us has the capability of operating at every single stage at some point in our lives. And you're going to be disturbed by the first one potentially, but it's true. And some people say, well, I never would have thought that person would have never ended up there or whatnot. All of us have the capability of moving between stages as we talk about today. So just think about, we're not defined by the stage, and organizations are not defined by the stage. In other words, don't pinhole somebody into a stage. This is a framework for you to recognize where people are operating to try and help them move up in the stages. So, tribal stage 1 represents about 2% of all professionals, characterized by this language: life sucks. Excuse the language. There's just no other way to do it. Everybody's life sucks. It's just terrible. We're awful. Nobody's good. It's just horrible. They're despairingly hostile. All right? I mean that literally. They band together to get ahead in a very violent fashion in a violent world. All right? Let's go into some examples. Prisons. are filled with stage 1 operators. Gangs are stage 1 operators. Terrorists are stage 1 operators. And I'd normally get on my soapbox for a second, but we don't have time. I don't talk about names of terrorists because I don't give them credit, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Most organizations don't tolerate individuals operating at stage 1, and so most of us don't have to deal with these people. Every once in a while, you'll have a stage 1 operator that may come in, right, to your organization looking for a job or whatnot, and you'll be able to recognize them pretty quick. Relationships, pretty alienated. I mean, they're only banding together with these other groups just because they have to, and that's how they're going to fight the world, because remember, that's their mentality. All right, so how do we get them up? We encourage them to go where the action is, socialize, figure out how life works, right? Life doesn't work that way. For the rest of the world, remember, only 2%. The rest of the 98% don't function like that. You got to help them see how the world works. Cut ties with those other stage 1 operators. Stage 2, 25% of professionals. Now here the language changes slightly, right? My life sucks, but your life looks pretty good. And that other person they're looking at can either be a colleague, and so they're sitting there going like this, right? Going, that guy looks, or it could be the boss, or it could be the man upstairs. I mean, it can be anybody, but the general language is my life sucks, but your life or his life or her life, they've got something going on, and now I'm jealous, all right? So it's usually sarcastically resigned. These are the people that stand at the office, at the edge of the office door, and just watch. You know, the new enthusiastic leader comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to do this program. We're going to do a personality test, right? We're all going to go through this program and learn how to." And that person's standing in the door, and they're thinking, "I've been through fads before. I'm just going to wait till this one passes." They're apathetic victims. I'm just not going to get engaged. This is just another thing we're going to go through. It's just going to pass on, all right? They feel like they don't have an impact, typically, on direction or strategy. And their relationships are generally loose, even though they're going to try and pull people into this stage 2, okay? So a new guy comes in, they go, "Hey, come here. Listen, to get ahead here, you just stay low, you stay in your office, look at the clock, make sure you're not late, but leave right at 4:30. You know, don't go off and they're trying to recruit, but they're not necessarily closely associated, generally speaking. Characterized by these types of things. They look at the clock all the time, right? It's just a job. You hear that comment? It's just a job. You know, stage 2 operator. All right. The other is the TV show The Office. How many of you have seen the TV show The Office? Okay, good. So there's a few folks. Those people in there were a bunch of stage 2 operators. Look at the picture there. You know, the leader, he's all crazy and kind of excited, and then everybody else is kind of like, "Are you kidding? We got to go through this. What's the latest fad? This is just crazy." Or they walk around, and it's not just a prank gift when they walk around with these T-shirts or these coffee mugs, right? They mean it. They'd rather be hunting. They'd rather be shopping, they'd rather be fishing, and they let you know that this is not really where they want to be, all right? So how do we upgrade these individuals? Encourage them to make a friend, a real friend, hopefully somebody who's in stage 3, and we're going to talk about that, okay? What stage 3 means like. Show them the value of their work. Give them an assignment. Typically, you give them an assignment which is a bit challenging, all right? But it's a short assignment that they can see their impact. That's important because they often don't see all I do is I take these invoices here, I write this stuff down, and then I pass it on. I have no idea what my impact is on this organization. Give them an assignment where they can see the impact and it leverages their strengths. They have a strength, believe it or not. And if you haven't discovered it, you need to take some time to think about what that is. All right, that leverages their strengths, and all of a sudden they start going, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe I can contribute to this organization. Maybe I can think about how I might be part of this." And then they start making a friend with somebody in stage 3, okay? All right, stage 3, half of us, so we'll split the room right here. All of you, no, I'm just kidding, are in stage 3. Their language is characterized by, "I'm great. I am great. But you are not." You see, I've got a PhD. Did I mention it was from Georgia Tech? You know, and I'm great. And I'm really awesome. And, Yeah, and you can tell people that are operating at stage 3 because you'll get introduced to them and they're standing like this and they kind of look at you and they go, so what do you do and where are you? And they kind of give you that little quiz right up at the front, right? Saying, hey, it's great to meet you. Tell me a little bit about you, And they're trying to assess whether or not you're better than they are. Okay, whether you've got better credibility than they do. And they're doing that real quick assessment of, is this a competitor? Is this somebody I can just kind of march all over? And so they're really looking at that notion of knowledge is power. I know it up here, and I'm not sharing it with you because it's power for me, right? It's all about what I can do and how I am. You end up with a bunch of lone warriors, these operators that kind of run out and do these different things. They're always competing. Internally and externally. It's in my world, it's engineering against HR. It's mechanical engineering versus electrical. There's always a competition with these individuals, right? Often characterized by a star and a support cast. All right. Think of my PhD academic faculty member. I know we have a few in here, so you have to bear with me. I work in an academic world, so I can say it a little bit. They're a faculty member, and they're the knowledge source. They're the star, and they've got this supporting cast of graduate students that are running all around, helping support them. And you think about the legal profession, right? We've got the star lawyers, and they've got this team of paralegals around them that are supporting them. How about the medical field? Very heavy in stage 3 operators in the medical field. This physician, and he walks in, and he just puts his hand out, and somebody puts a chart in it, and he looks at it, right? I mean, doesn't even know who that person is. They just put it in his hand. It's these operators that are kind of these stars, these lone warriors, and the problem is you end up with an organization that looks a little bit like the Wild Wild West. And you've got these independent groups that are kind of spinning out here. There's no synergy, there's no interaction, and no connection. Winning is personal for them. That's what it's about. All right, so how do we upgrade stage 3? It's tough. You encourage them to connect. See, the problem with stage 3 is they want to hoard all those contacts, all right? The relationship is characterized by a dyadic relationship. It's just you and me, all right? Are we good? All right, yeah, I'll make a relationship with you, but I'm not going to introduce you to him. Even though he and I have a good relationship, we're good, and she and I are good, and yeah, I know him, but I'm not going to introduce him, even though I know that if I introduce the two of you, you could help each other, right? But that's power. You see, I know what you know, and I know what you know, and I'm not going to let you two get together because then you got to come through me. See? That's how that works. So what you've got to do is start helping them connect their network independently. There's a few people that I know that are just brilliant at this, and the Commissioner of Agriculture is one of them. He'll connect you with anybody, right? Hey, have you met so-and-so? You need to come over here and talk to so-and-so and whatnot and whatnot. And many of you know Mr. Abbott Massey from the Poultry Federation. He'll come and, hey, you need to know so-and-so, and let me introduce you over here, and this person, well, y'all ought to get together because you could possibly, these are stage 4 operators, right? But that's the type of network that you're trying to get these people to create. Have them work on bigger projects. Often their complaint is they don't have enough time, and the support staff they have is incompetent. That's classic language of stage 3 operators. Well, they've kind of crafted their world that way, typically, right? And what you've got to do is get them to realize they can't go any further than what they're doing right now unless they build a network of other people that can help them get even further faster. All right, so it's about the network. Help them realize that power comes in the network, not directly in the knowledge. All right, stage 4. A quarter of us, roughly, are in stage 4. This is a great place. This is characterized by language. We're great, all right? I mean, we're great. We are great. Everybody on the team, everybody it can be in a division, it can be in the whole organization, but we're great. I mean, we're knocking it out of the park. Tribe is excited to be together. They claim that they're a member of that tribe. Well, what group do you? Oh, I work in this division. Man, it's awesome. We do great stuff. And man, I need to meet some of the other people in this division because we're working so great together. These are stage 4 operators, right? That's the language and the type of excitement that comes about. Everyone seems happy. They look you in the face, right? Have you been in organizations where you walk down the hall and you're new there? You don't know anybody. You're visiting one, and nobody will look you in the face. And then, good morning. Walking down home. Not a stage 4 organization, right? Stage 4 is like, hey, how are you doing? What do you do? Where are you from? What do you, And so you kind of get a sense then that people are excited to be there. Shared values is the key component around a stage 4 organization. Without shared values, you're not going to stay in stage 4, right? And that's the way you also get a stage 3 operator to move up to a stage 4. Is you help them recognize that you have common values, that you're trying to achieve a common goal. That's what brings and gels a stage 4 organization or individuals in a stage 4. Now in stage 4, there's always an adversary, all right? But typically, it's external. Let's use the Apple and the Microsoft example, right? Some pretty good organizations, generally speaking. There's always an adversary on the outside. There's always somebody they're competing against. Remember, we're great here, but those people on the other side of the street are not, right? They're the competition. Coca-Cola and Pepsi, right? These are the classic competition adversaries on the outside. Relationships are formed by stable triads. This is where I know you and you know him and he knows me, and we've got this network of triads that we kind of all interact with, and we can share. And you go, oh, well, you know Garrett over here. Yeah, I know, we've met, and good. Well, he does this, and yeah, okay, well, you ought to talk to him because I think that. And what about Ned? And it goes on like that. The question is, how do we get them up to stage 5? Stage 5. Stage 4. How do we get them up to stage 4? The reality is you can't stay at stage 5, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So we change our language here a little bit to say, how do we stabilize at stage 4? All right? Ensure the triads are based on common values, core values and strategies. That's the important component for a stage 4 organization. If you don't have that, and you haven't gone through the exercise of discovering that or figuring that out, then you definitely need to take a step back as an organization and figure out what your values are and what your core strategies are. Encourage them to stretch projects, all right? What are these projects that are going to encourage them to have to reach out and use their network? It's one thing to have a network. It's another thing for me to rely on the network to deliver part of what I need to get done, right, as a whole team. Typically, the language here also is stage 3 operators tend to fall in love with their idea. Stage 4 operators tend to fall in love with the solution. Do you see the slight distinction? Right? The idea is my idea, right? Now, we can be part of a team, and if it's not your idea, then it's not going to work, stage 3. Stage 4 is I'm bringing my idea to the table, but it may become better because you might contribute a little and build off of my idea, and at the end, we've got this common solution that gets provided on up. Don't try to solve the team problems. If you're a leader in a stage 4 organization, the people in the organization are going to want to come to you because they see you as that star, remember? Stage 3 kind of mentality. And the temptation is going to be to go, oh yeah, well, I can help you solve that problem. Let me do this and that. You've got to push the problem back down to the organization or to the group that's struggling with it because they need to be empowered to solve some of these challenges. You can be a contributor, and you can say, well, have you thought about this or that? But then you give it back to them and give them ownership. Don't come in and solve all their problems because that's going to be a challenge. You're then moving back to a stage 3 where you've got a star and a supporting cast. Stage 5. Less than 2% of professionals, language is life is great, right? We're great here. The competition's great. External is great. I mean, everything is just great. Here's the reality is you can't stay there, right? So what happens generally is organizations bump up into operating at stage 5 for a while, and then they drop down to stage 4, and they bump up to stage 5, and they drop down to stage 4. That's normal. That's normal in terms of this thinking. But the whole idea is the adversary has now become the impossible, right? Curing cancer, right? Isn't that the Cancer Society slogan? Curing cancer. That's the adversary now, and we all get together and figuring out how to do that. Whether it's our foundation or the other foundation, or we're together in this. We're not competitors in that. There's a sense of destiny for greatness. We're going to accomplish something that nobody has ever been able to do, and they know it. They're on a destiny. The tribe believes they'll make history, right? This was the team that drove the iPad. This is the team that pushed the personal computer out. I mean, it was incredible. They often produce miraculous results. How many of you remember the ice hockey team? I know hockey's not a big thing in Georgia, but it's a great example. The 1980 Olympic ice hockey team, Miracle on Ice. Yeah, okay, so there's a few of us in here that remember that. For those of you who weren't around in 1980, let me just tell you, the United States at the time only sent amateur athletes to the Olympics. Only. So no professional athletes went to the Olympics. We were competing against the Russians and the Finnish who were allowing their professional athletes to compete in the Olympics. So the United States had no chance of winning, period. I mean, they weren't even considered to be in the top 4 when they went into the competition. And in the semifinals, they'd won up into that point, which is a huge surprise, all college players, and they got to the semifinals, and who did they play? Russia. And man, Russia had won the last 6 of the 7 gold medals in hockey. It was impossible. The U.S. was not supposed to win that, all right? U.S. gets out there, and they beat Russia with college players against a team of professionals. Why? Not because they were skilled better, but because this organization was operating at stage 5, and the Russian organization was operating at stage 3, right? Bunch of stars, and not necessarily a team. All right? They went on then to beat Finland and won the gold medal. It was called the Miracle on Ice. They weren't supposed to be there. The bad news is you can't stay at stage 5, so you bump up and down, but you can prepare your team and elevate them and get them to think that way. Relationships are highly networked teams. This team functions with that team, which functions with that team, and they do a lot of coordination in that sense. All right, so how do we get people to really move up? So here's some strategies for getting people to move up. Unfortunately, you can't move organizations up. You can only move individuals. So you've got to focus on individuals within the organization. And when you get enough individuals within the organization, starting to make the transition from, let's say, stage 3 to stage 4, which is typically where we like to try and move them, when you get enough people in the tribe that are making that transition, 2 things will happen. Well, one of 2 things will happen. Either the rest of the team will come with them and start to see the benefit and the value of moving up, or they'll leave, because they just simply they can't be part of that new tribal culture, okay? You got to cast a vision for this team. If you don't have a vision for where you're going to go and what's going to happen, you're not going to be very effective. You've got to cast that vision, and it's got to be pretty simple. Curing cancer. 2 words, it's their vision, right? When I gave this talk in Atlanta, the challenge was my vision for our organization was 25 words long. And I said, guys, I've had to rework this because I've realized nobody in my organization can remember what it is. What's our vision? Can anybody in your organization remember or know what your vision is for your organization? They should. If they don't, we've got a leadership communication challenge ahead of us, all right? You can't skip stages. You can't go from level 2 to level 4. You've got to get that level 2 operator to start thinking they're great and everybody else isn't for a while. Get them to level 3, and then you've got to get them thinking they need to build a network. And the best way to do that is point to examples of other people. Remember that imitation component of culture? One is communication, language. That's the key part. The second is imitation. Point them to other people who are operating at stage 4 and say, hey, man, you could really be that person right there if you built a network and you really leveraged it productively, all right? Once critical mass is established, the tribe will own the culture. That was something that Alan Mulally pointed out at Ford. He said, when he came in, he changed the culture of the organization, and the organization kind of took and adopted it and ran with it, all right? It was really, that's an interesting case. Identify that noble cause as well. So what's that thing that you're all about, okay? And that'll really help you to drive this forward. This is just a summary, and I know I'm probably getting, I've got a few minutes, so that's good. This is just a summary of the stages, okay? We'll quickly go through them again. Stage 1 at the bottom. Life sucks. That's the language. The collaboration, alienated. Nobody does anything together. I mean, remember, violent. They're getting together because the world is violent, and they got to fight it. They got to fight, man. You got to fight. They got to fight something. They're going to fight the work. They're going to fight each other. They're going to fight something. Diagram of kind of the relationships. They're independent operators. They'll band together in order to fight, but then I'll tell you what, that banding is often pretty loose, and you can break it apart if you know how to do it. Stage 2, my life sucks, but hey, her life is pretty good, and she's the boss. I think I want her life, but man, I'm kind of jealous. Right? And they stand there. They're those apathetic victims that sit in the offices, complain. All right? Again, somewhat separate. They're going to try and recruit, but you notice the density of the group around them in that relationship sector is a little bit tighter. All right? Stage 3, I'm great. I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I work at this laboratory, and I, do this. And I've got 30 graduate students. Academics are notorious for being stage 3, so I like to make fun of them, so I'm sorry for my academic friends. But I work in that world, right? And the introductions are not great like Garrett gave there. And this is Dr. So-and-so, and he's got 25 graduate students. He's published 75 papers, and he's got this award and that award. And it's all about the star, right? And a supporting cast. That's what that looks like. And it's dyadic relationships. It's this academic faculty member with that student, and this academic faculty member with that student. It's this boss with that employee. It's this boss with that employee. It's this boss with that employee. It's this person with that other external person. And the only reason I'm in relationship with that external person is because they provide value to me in my program. Got it? I'm not providing value back to them necessarily. And I'm certainly not going to make the introduction between them and them, even though I know they could really benefit from that, but man, I can't let them get ahead of me. Remember, winning is personal in this stage 3, all right? So, stage 4, partnership. We're great, and they're not, right? We're great, and they're not. There's always an adversary, and you got to help them identify that sometimes. And sometimes it's good to have an organization where you have an adversary, all right? And you can see that the relationship is really a team kind of relationship. And then stage 5, life is great. Clearly a team, a networked set of teams, and you can see there a bunch of these teams that function together, pull in. A lot of times they call it a matrixed organization, although that often is not exactly how it works. But typically, there's a lot of interaction between different parts. All the individual members of the tribe make contributions, and they contribute to the overall project. You just can't stay there. So you got to stabilize on level 4, stage 4, and then move up. Now the challenge is as I've been talking, you've been thinking about everybody in your organization, right? Isn't that fair? What about you? Where do you sit? What stage are you operating at? Remember, culture is 2 things: language and imitation of behavior. So if you're a leader or aspire to be a leader in an organization, you've got to be functioning at a level 4. All right, so do a little bit of reflection. Those personality tests are great, by the way. And I love the personality test because really the way I like to look at it, and somebody described it to me this way at one point in time, and they said, listen, when you go through this test, you're going to get upset because you're going to find out something. You're like, I'm not that way, or I don't know about that. But here's the reality. When you start reflecting on it, you start realizing it's like your most comfortable pair of shoes. You have a preference in how you like to perform. That's all that's telling you, right? And so you have a pair of shoes. These are not the comfortable pair of shoes that I like to wear. I like to wear Keens. I can't wear Keens with a tie, although I thought about doing it today just for fun. But it's like a comfortable pair of shoes. And once you learn what you like in terms of your comfortable pair of shoes, you're okay putting on these dress shoes every once in a while. You're okay operating in these other stages because it's not changing who you are in a definition of a person. You're not trying to become somebody else, right? You're just learning to function in a little bit different way. So I love that analogy. Think of those personality tests as helping you define what type of shoes you like best so that you can be comfortable in those shoes and also comfortable putting on other shoes from time to time. So just a quick analogy on that. But I'm a big fan of some of those testing mechanisms. There's the book. All right, we have just run through a 250-page book in 25 minutes. I can't even give it justice. I've just laid out the framework, all right? 5 stages. It's pretty simple. The reason I like it is I'm an engineer, all right? And I need simple stuff like this to help me understand just basic operational structures of how you manage people, identify what stage people are operating at. Remember, people are not defined by the stage. We have to allow them and give them permission to move between stages. If we're really honest with ourselves, we fluctuate, right? We fluctuate back and forth in some of those stages. And so this book really gives some insight. Dave Logan and his team have done a terrific job of breaking it down for people, even with engineering degrees, to be able to understand. So with that, I appreciate your time and your attention. And again, I appreciate Brian making the introduction and the invitation to come and be part of this. So thank you so much.